In this vignette, we'll demonstrate how the therapist reviews the activity schedule with the client after the client has gone home and committed to engaging in the activities in the previous session. We'll note how the therapist listens to the client's experience and also how the therapist addresses some problems that come up which are quite common in behavioral activation as we're first working with clients to schedule activities. Max, how did it go with the activity scheduling? Did you bring in your sheet for us to look at?
I didn't remember to write down I took some notes on my phone, but I didn't write down everything.
Well, you were going to just write down if you did it, and then maybe note how you were feeling.
Yeah.
But you wrote some things down on your phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't exactly do everything we'd planned.
Okay. Do you have your phone with you? And let's talk about what you did do. And let me make sure I remember what you're going to do.
Notes if you want to look at
Oh, great. Right. So you always teach class on Tuesday and Thursday. So on the Tuesday, you were going to go in for the prep time at 10 and then go to the library. And then on the Thursday, you're going to go in for the prep time. And during that time between prep and class, you're going to contact your advisor. So can you explain your notes to me? Because I can't really understand exactly what happened. So if you can explain that to me.
Sure. So Tuesday I went in and I did look up. So there were a few books that I wanted to look up.
Okay.
And I looked at 2 books and I checked one out.
Okay.
Because the chapter looked like it was going to work.
Okay. Can I ask, did you need to rely on the alarm? Like what happened? We had considered the possibility, like if you had a really bad night. Just tell me how it all went, starting from Monday evening through Tuesday.
Sure. So Monday wasn't really that eventful. It was mostly fine, and I actually got a pretty good night's sleep. So,
Okay.
I did try over the week to just smoke a little bit less.
Oh, okay.
So I did smoke a little bit less on Monday.
Okay,
too.
great.
So,
Excellent. And that made you feel a little bit better, clearer-headed in the morning.
Yeah, the morning was a little bit better, and then also I think I just felt a little better after doing that too.
Oh, good.
So,
Did you still eat dinner?
I did eat dinner. Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't like a big dinner, but I ate dinner. Yeah.
Okay.
But I did forget to bring the snack that I wanted.
On Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't eat the snack?
I did eat the snack after the books.
Okay. Do you find that it's hard for you to teach class? Does that have an impact on teaching? How many hours is that class after?
It's an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half. How do you find that if you haven't eaten? Had you eaten at all that day?
I don't remember. I didn't write down whether I ate in the morning or not.
Okay. Typically, do you not?
Sometimes I'll have like a yogurt or something.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but
the only reason I ask, I still want to find out what happened with some of the other activities, but I just always want to keep us aware of if there are some things where one activity leads to another, and even the absence of an activity like not eating, that might have an impact on your ability to really perform at your best. So let's not get too far off track, but I just want to keep those things in mind too.
Yeah, I don't remember feeling hungry, but I
Okay.
don't remember feeling particularly great when I was teaching either.
Right.
I think my mood was the same as it was the week before on the teaching thing. I don't remember what I rated it. I think it was a 7 or 8.
Okay.
Or something around there.
When you found the books, did that have any impact on your mood at all?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was.
Did you write it down in there? Did you write anything there about your mood, or did you just remember?
I'm just kind of remembering.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you remember?
I guess I remember kind of feeling when I had actually checked one of the books out, like that felt like something had been done.
Okay.
And that felt kind of good initially.
Okay. So what does that mean, good, initially? Like a little bit relief or
Yeah,
a little motivated? What did you feel?
I think I hadn't been sure that I was going to do it. And so it felt sort of like, yeah, like that, almost like I had sort of felt going up into it that there was a good chance that honestly, I thought I might come in here and just tell you I did it and not do it, right? Like that was
Okay,
a thing
right.
that crossed my mind.
Okay.
But
Sure.
that I actually did it, and I
Right.
felt like I could come in and say that I did it.
Great. What we were going for was for you to have a success experience, and it sounds like that was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's great. That's a step forward. Did it feel like a step forward, a small step forward to you?
Yeah, I think initially, and then it sort of felt like more after class was over, like that it felt worse that I hadn't done the snack. Like at first it didn't feel like that big a deal, but then it felt worse then, and then it also kind of felt like I realized I'd gone and done the books, but I hadn't done all of the like feeling things and seeing. You wanted me to rate what I felt when I was doing it, and I hadn't done all of that.
Okay. I'm not sure that I was all that clear about rating what you felt. So I'm wondering if there maybe are some things that just we can do differently today when we plan further. Even the snack, did that trip you up to have you write snack in there? Was having it written down sort of, did that lead to you feeling worse because you forgot?
No, I think it was more just that when I even had set that second alarm, like I don't think I necessarily needed it. I think I was getting along well. I just hadn't written the snack, like I hadn't thought about it as much, and so
Okay.
yeah, I was sort of really focused on getting in, and the book part was what I was focused
Great.
on.
Great. Well, since that was the thing you were focused on, that was also the most important thing and consistent with your values.
Yeah.
Right. And moved you a little bit toward the goal. Okay. So I think that's great. And, any harm done in not having the snack?
I don't think so.
A little bit less, maybe a little less energetic in class, but
Yeah, I think it was more. If I think about it, it would have been nice if I did it, but it's not like I forgot to do something that I typically do.
right.
It just probably would have been better if I had done it.
Right, because you've been struggling with eating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about Thursday? You were going to email your advisor, and it was a specific email,
Yeah.
right? Because you were going to sort of do a little bit of both. It was almost like there's still a little bit of avoiding seeing him, but you were going to tell him about the chapter, finding the chapter, and asking about setting up a time, so it moves you a little towards approaching rather than avoiding that.
Yeah.
What happened there? Did you do it?
I didn't do it. I kind of felt like I got. I hadn't read like the full chapter. I had like sort of looked at the books and I thought the chapter might be useful, but I hadn't read it, and I just kind of thought it would be a waste of his time to go over something with me that I hadn't looked into.
Okay.
And it just didn't feel like it made sense at that point.
Okay. And so what would you say was the barrier to doing it? Not having read the chapters?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just hadn't read the chapter that I wanted to email about, so it didn't seem like it made a lot of sense to, if he did want to meet, then I wouldn't be prepared for that meeting, and it just seemed like kind of a one step forward, two steps back kind of thing.
Okay. So I'm curious about something, Max, because even as you're telling me about it, your energy level has dropped just a little bit, even from telling me about doing the going to the library. Are you feeling a little awkward or down, even telling me? Like, has some of that shame and guilt shown its head right now, even?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those feelings, were they kind of there stopping you from, like, was that the mood that was driving the behavior of actually not emailing your advisor?
Yeah, I felt pretty I felt guilty that I hadn't read. I know we hadn't planned on me necessarily reading the chapter. It was just to find the book, right? But I felt guilty that I hadn't done it.
Okay.
Because I guess in my head I was sort of thinking that would be the best case scenario, would be if I had been able to like have a productive meeting if we met. And then so I felt bad about that, and then I just felt really stupid. Like it just felt stupid to. Yeah, it just didn't feel like it was an actually useful thing to do. Or like
What was it useful? I'm sorry.
Well, useful for like the project, I guess. It just feels like it's not enough right now to bring him into. Like it's not a big enough concern for him.
Okay. So I think this is a really good thing for us to talk about, because it seems to me that maybe we weren't being clear enough on what the goal is, and that became really confusing. And really opened the door for feeling guilty and not calling him because you were thinking that you hadn't done enough, right? Because you're right. The assignment was to go find the books, or a book, or a couple books, and you did that. We never even talked about reading. And I wonder if maybe I was thinking the goal of you contacting your advisor was a little different than your goal was. Because I was thinking that it would just be making a connection and actually suggesting going a next step of actually meeting to talk about the chapters. What was your goal?
Yeah, I think that's what I had said. I had said it would be a good idea to send him an email just saying, I found this book, if you want to talk about it, could we talk about it, kind of thing. And that made sense at the time. But
Would that have required you having read the chapter?
No, I don't think it would have,
Okay.
right? Yeah, and that actually does, as we talk about it, make sense.
So I'm just curious, did your goal change over that time?
I think so.
What was the change?
I think I just wanted to kind of feel like if we met, he would be proud of like the step I had taken. And
Okay.
I don't think he'd be proud of me for having like gone to a library and checked a book out.
Okay. So your goal at that point was to make him proud.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole different goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you help me understand that goal a little bit? I mean, how is it is it important to you generally to make him proud of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things I sort of want the most when we talk about the relationship I have with him, is that's what I want him to think about me and feel about me. I don't want him to think like my time here was a waste of his time, or that
Okay.
we didn't do good work together. That
Okay.
I want him to be proud of our work, and I want him to be proud of me as like his student.
Okay. Has he given you indications in the past that he's proud of you?
He was really happy with my master's thesis.
Okay. So you've had this experience where have you felt good about that? Like, did that meet kind of this goal, this thing that you value of having him be proud of you?
I question it sometimes, like, what is he just a nice person? Like,
Right.
Like it would be pretty mean for somebody to sort of trash a milestone like that. And so maybe he was just a nice person, and he just wanted me to keep going.
Once again, we can't be in his mind.
Yeah.
I sometimes think it's good to just take people at face value sometimes. Did he tell you did a good job?
Yeah.
Did he seem pleased when you finished your defense? Any indications of what he's done, what you're doing with the final product? Like, has he been encouraging you to publish from it, or?
That's sort of that's kind of been put on the back burner. Like, we had hoped to publish with a collaborator on it, but we sort of had to retool as time went on and the dissertation didn't progress as quickly.
Okay. So making people proud, is that something that's important to you beyond just your advisor?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something when we were talking about relationships and values a few sessions back. I wasn't quite clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just explain that to me? It's a, I mean, to be honest, I never think about making people proud. So I'm curious to just know a little bit more about what that means to you.
Yeah. I guess it's just important in the way I was brought up.
Okay.
That, like, that's kind of a strong motivator for doing well, is like, is it gonna make my parents proud? Is it gonna kind of, in a way, pay them back? Like, that's like, make them feel like they made a good investment, I think.
Okay.
That's sort of the way I think of it, is I want people who have made an investment in me to get a payoff, and sometimes it feels like they're not getting that.
Okay, so this is important for how you were raised, and making people proud is a value that you hold.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents hold that value also?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is really important because it seems like that may be a value that can lead to some goals that we haven't considered before. And it also seems like that may be contributing to you feeling even worse when you don't meet the appointments with your advisor.
Mm-hmm.
Is that also why you haven't been contacting your parents as much?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just sort of, when they ask about my progress or how I'm doing, or I just don't want to disappoint them. I don't want them to think that it was sort of for nothing, or that I made the wrong choice,
Right.
or, yeah.
So, the dilemma is that the steps you need to take may not be the big steps that you're going to feel good about having done to make people proud. So, how can we figure out how taking some of those steps, like sending the email and just telling your advisor that you found the book and want to talk about some chapters, that you can do that even if it doesn't fit the goal of making him proud, and at the same time have you keep that goal? Obviously, you don't want to give up that goal. It sounds like it's something that is important to you from your family. Is it like a cultural value also for you? It's something that is pretty important.
Yeah, it's a big part of...
Right. So we don't want to give that up. But it takes a fair amount of activity, I would think, just for you to have a sense that you've made people proud, for you to feel like you've done the things that make people proud. Mm-hmm. Whether it makes them proud or not, I don't know. We don't have any control of that. But I think what's important is for you to do the steps that'll make you feel like you can make people proud.
Mm-hmm.
But those are too big to do right now. So what are we going to do?
Yeah, I guess it's tough, because it feels like it's another thing that has to kind of go on the back burner for a little while, maybe.
I'm sorry, what's going to go on the back burner?
Like that idea of making people proud, I guess. Like, it just feels like if the steps are too big, there's other stuff that has to happen first.
So, and maybe this is just semantics, but putting it on the back burner seems like some things we do with stuff that's not as important to us, and this seems really important to you.
Yeah.
Can you keep it still out in front of you, but see it as something that may be a little bit of a longer term goal, and we can talk about the shorter term steps in between? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we can turn our attention towards now, looking towards next week, learning from what has happened, is it fair for me to ask you to set another goal and put it in your schedule, and maybe we can put it on your phone to actually email your advisor.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you need to do between now and when you would set it in your schedule, that whenever you decide to set it in your schedule, that would make you feel that would make it easier for you to contact him? Like, should we have you put in the schedule to read one of those chapters?
Yeah, I feel better if that were.
So if you had read the chapter, would that be enough that would maybe, if we think about action, creating action, you've gone to the library, you've gotten the book. If you read the chapter, might that give you some action that would maybe move you a little? Catapult's probably too big of a word, but that's the only word I could think of to catapult you to emailing your advisor.
Yeah, I think it would give us something to talk about.
Okay.
Like, yeah,
All right.
because I guess my what I sort of saw happening was it was just what would we even talk about when we meet? Like, what would
Right.
be the point for him? Just to hear that I got out of the library, like that
Right.
would seem small. But
Okay.
if I actually knew the content of the chapter, sort of, so I could ask questions or say
Okay,
how I thought it
maybe
applied.
even put something in the email.
Yeah.
Okay, great. When are you going to read the chapter? Let's put that in your schedule. So why don't we just turn our attention now to figuring out when can we
Yeah.
put that in the schedule? What's a realistic time?
I could do it before my Tuesday.
Okay, so we'll go
class,
back to
that
the
same time. Yeah.
that same time. Great. Why don't you go ahead and write that in?
What did you notice about how the therapist responded to Max's partially completed log? How did the therapist use specific goals and values to continue to motivate Max's engagement in treatment? What are other common barriers for clients in completing planned activities?
In this vignette, we saw how the client had both successes and, in his mind, failures over the previous week in attempting the activities that he'd scheduled. Note that even though Max thought 2 activities weren't enough, in fact, 2 activities were quite difficult for him. Max succeeded in going to the library and looking up a book, but as is also common with clients in behavioral activation, he had set a goal for himself post-session that was not part of the original plan, and that was, in fact, to read a chapter. Then, when he hadn't read the chapter, a lot of his negative feelings, guilt, shame, came up, and that prevented him, or was a stumbling block, to following through on his next planned activity of sending an email to his advisor. It's important and interesting to note that there were other values that Max held, of which he and the therapist had not discussed in previous sessions, that had great meaning for Max, both because of his culture and his family background. It was very meaningful to Max to make others proud of him, and that was a strong motivator. When Max, in fact, had not read the chapter and worried that his advisor would not be proud of him, it made it more difficult for him to follow through on sending the email, and thus he avoided doing it. These are common problems that arise. A principle that we have in behavioral activation is that all results are useful, and that we have to take what the client brings and treat them without judgment. Notice that as the therapist, I didn't judge Max or make many comments about the fact that he didn't complete the homework. Rather, what I did was try and problem solve with him and to look to both his own barriers and perhaps barriers in the treatment that kept him from succeeding. It became clear to me in the session that we hadn't discussed the value of making others proud, and that may have been a missed opportunity that we could have discussed prior to sending Max home in the week before with the activity schedule. We can think of the expression, no harm, no foul. These things come up. It's not a failure of the therapist, nor is it a failure of the client. It's all part of the process of problem solving and overcoming barriers of avoidance and other internal and external barriers to activation that help clients move forward in their treatment.